the manager, Louis-Antoine Dessaulles, wrote in his pamphlet called The Great Ecclesiastical War, that was quite, that made some commotion at the time. So, and I quote, scholars have seen, scholars have seen to what degree of intellectual, political, and national nudity and moral inferiority the clergies of all countries have reduced the peoples that they have succeeded in controlling and dominating. The author of a discourse on tolerance that also caused sensation at the time, Dessaulles openly opposed the Bishop of Montreal. And we go to the next image.
Just thanks.
The next one. So, because he's not that guy is not really a charming person, as you'll see, but I actually wanted you to see his face. So, Dessaulles openly opposed that man, the Bishop of Montreal, the ultra-reactionary Ignace Bourget, that was his name, who was trying at the time to make Montreal the rough equivalent for Catholicism of what Tehran in Iran is today for Islam. With fanatic zeal, Bourget fought the Canadian Institute, excommunicating all its members. Attacked and slandered from all quarters, Louis-Antoine Dessaulles, the gentleman you saw just before him, was forced to flee in exile to France, where he died in 1895. So can we go to the next? Okay. At the same time, Arthur Buis, yeah, that's him, a formidable polemicist and freethinker. He edited and published a newspaper called La Lanterne, which he presented as a humorous weekly newspaper, the instinctive enemy of the stupidities, ridiculous ways, vices, and defects of men. End of quote. In 1868, for example, in his newspaper, which genuinely haunted the clergy, despite its author's modest means, Buis declared that clerical education is the poison of the people. So shortly thereafter occurred the memorable and pathetic Guibard affair, involving the printer Joseph Guibard. Mr. Guibard. So yes. Mr. Guibard died in November 1869, and being a member of the Canadian Institute, he was excommunicated by Bishop Bourget, and was therefore not entitled to a church burial. However, Guibard's wife instituted legal action against the parish of Notre-Dame de Montréal. In May 1870, the court ordered the parish to bury Guibard in the Catholic cemetery. The parish immediately appealed from the judgment. There followed long legal proceedings that provoked public passions. 4 years later, so it took 4 years, in a judgment by the Privy Council in London, which ordered that Guibard be buried in a Catholic cemetery, in the Catholic cemetery, and also directed the parish to pay all legal expenses. So that's the way it culminated. Despite that judgment, it was not until November of the following year that Guibard was finally interred at Côte-des-Neiges Cemetery in Montreal. But some 1,200 troops were ordered to protect the funeral procession from the crowds of fanatics stirred up by Bishop Bourget, who, unaware of the ridiculous nature of his own actions, went so far as to solemnly deconsecrate the small plot where Guibard was buried. was sure would suffer the eternal torments of hell. So that was a very charitable decision. But the general, what happened after the Guibard affair, it exhausted the Canadian Institute. So the Institute did not survive the constant, intensive attack against campaigns by the clergy. In subsequent years, another great freethinker clearly distinguished himself by the audacity and temerity of his actions. So can you go to the next? Honoré Beaugrand, novelist and author of stories that are still well known, and founder of the newspaper La Patrie, was a very progressive Freemason who fiercely defended the spirit of the Enlightenment. He advocated the most advanced liberal ideas: anti-clericalism, republicanism, and free, secular, mandatory education. Beaugrand, who was mayor of Montreal from 1885 to 1887, practiced a brand of politics that was revolutionary in the context of the times. In particular, by introducing mandatory vaccination during the smallpox epidemic of 1885, which resulted in riots fomented by our clergy, for whom vaccination was a work of the devil. Beaugrand even had to call in the Federal Army to protect the doctors and nurses who were giving vaccines to the public. Before settling in Montreal, Beaugrand lived for some time in Fall River, Massachusetts, where he published the French-language newspaper La République. The editor of an ultra-Catholic paper called Le Protecteur accused him of being a disciple of Satan. Beaugrand, however, was never intimidated by this kind of accusation. In fact, the more clerical supporters attacked him, the more he was encouraged to retaliate and assert his secular liberal ideas. I'm going to read in full his answer to the editor of Le Protecteur, because it attests to both Beaugrand's audacity in defying clerical obscurantism and to the unshakable assurance of his convictions. So I quote, "I will give Le Protecteur an enormous pleasure, because I will do it the honor of answering its questions categorically, so that its owners, so that its worthy owner can use my responses to stir up the religious prejudices of its readers against me. Dear Protector, please tell your subscribers once again. First, I am a Freemason, and a very advanced Freemason. Two, I am a very advanced liberal. 3, I am an enthusiastic admirer of the principles of the French Revolution and a supporter of the Declaration of the Rights of Man. 4, I march and feel immense pride in doing so, under the banner of progress and civilization. 5, I admire and support the political principles of those great promoters of secularism, Mr. Grévy, Simon, and Gambetta, so in France, in Europe at the time. 6, I believe and practice what I see fit, and I refuse to submit to any religion. So, are you pleased, holy apostles of editorship? Damn us across the board. Prepare your thunderbolts. Launch your excommunication, etc., etc. End of quote. So it goes without saying that Honoré Beaugrand, who died in 1906, was not buried in a Catholic cemetery.
Un protestant?
Protestant, oui, Montréal.